Hello everybody. Does that sound okay? Great. So hello everyone, and thank you for coming to this vigil to commemorate 4 years since the commencement of the current offshore detention regime in Australia's current offshore detention regime. First of all, I'd like to introduce Uncle Ray Davison. He's a Gadigal elder from the Aurora Nation.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Uncle Ray Davison, as we just said. I'm here this evening on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Lands Council. The Lands Council has members being the custodians to the clan groups of the Eora Nation, give me permission this evening to come along and welcome you all to country on this really wonderful occasion for you all. Look, it's really wonderful. Each and every time I have the opportunity to give welcome to country, to stand on my traditional land and give welcome to country, it's really special to me, and I love relaying to people. It doesn't matter if I do welcome to country once a year or 100 times a year, pardon me. Each and every time I have an opportunity to give welcome to country, it's special, and I take it as a great privilege each and every time I have that opportunity. So to be here tonight, it's truly wonderful to be a small part of the things that are going on with the refugees, and just in my small way tonight, it's wonderful for me to come along. Now look, I always take the opportunity when giving welcome to country just to remind us all that we have one mother, and that's Mother Earth. Mother Earth knows each and every one of us, and she loves us all equally. It doesn't matter who we are or where we come from, we're all loved the same. So whether we've been here for 10,000 years, 1 year, or a new child born today, if you're part of this country, you're born on country, you're part of this country. And I always take this opportunity when I look around at people's faces and say, yes, I can see that most people here this evening, your ancestral line is from overseas, and that's wonderful. It owns you and you own it. It'll always be part of you. But if you're born on country here within Australia, and you know what I say with what we Australians mean when we say born on country, it's not born in Australia as a country, but the country that you're born on within Australia. So no matter who you are, where you come from, when you're born on country, you're part of that country. And just remember, each and every time you come and go from that country, it's not just your direct ancestors who are saying hello and goodbye to you each time. There's the people that have been on that cultural land for thousands of years. They know you too, because you're born on country, and they're there saying hello and goodbye to you each and every time too. Now, each and every time I have opportunity to give welcome to country, if it's anything to do with our children, within our culture, we regard our children as our future, and our elders as the future teachers for those people. And it's no different throughout Australia, whether it's Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal, and in that case, all around the world. So when we think about our children, there's no future without them. And to be here this evening, once again on such a special occasion, is really wonderful for me, because anything to do with children, housing, or education, those sorts of things, it involves all of us. And I'm feeling that in case of the refugees, all of those things, it encompasses all those things. They're all combined. So, whatever we can do within Australia to help those people, well, naturally, I'd like to be a small part of it in that way to the Metro Lands Council. Now, my people, the Gadigal people, the 129 clans that make up the Eora Nation, and our clan land boundaries are the 3 rivers of Sydney, which we regard as sacred. Now, welcome to country, as a lot of you might not understand, goes back many thousands of years, and its origins is right here on the east coast of Australia. And we've always said welcome to country when we have big celebrations and big corroborees, and we celebrate by song and dance. Now, right here in this area, we've had some big corroborees for thousands and thousands of years. So tonight is a gathering, tonight is a corroboree, and this is a big corroboree here tonight. So once again, I'm really thankful to be a small part of it. As I said a moment ago, my people, the Gadigal people, my clan land runs from Circular Key up to Redfern. My people, the Gadigal people, have had the longest continuous unbroken association with Europeans since the settlement of Australia, so it's quite special and unique for me to come out and welcome you to our traditional land. And in saying that, to each and every one of you, welcome to my country, welcome to your country, welcome to our country. So once again, as I said a moment ago, no matter who you are, where we come from, when you're born on country, you're part of country. And I get a bit cheeky about this too, because all you really special people here tonight, all of you people there that may be born within the Eora, my area, the Sydney area, just remember this: you're born, or you're part of the most beautiful traditional country in Australia, in the most beautiful city, in the most beautiful country in the world. And once again, for all you're here for, what you're doing tonight, it's really, really special. But being part of the Eora, it's really special. Once again, black and white doesn't come into it, or ethnicity. You're part of country, you're born on country. All of Australia is beautiful country, we know that, and all of Australia is beautiful traditional lands, and no matter where we come from within Australia, it's all beautiful country. Now, once again, as I was saying a moment ago, my people, the Gadigal people, are one of 29 clans that make up the Eora Nation, and our clan land boundaries are the three rivers of Sydney, and I say it this way each and every time I have opportunity. The wonderfully handsome Hawkesbury River to the north, with its wonderful caves and inlets, the beautiful Nepean River out to the west with its wonderful sandy shores and beautiful land out there, agricultural land. It's been the fruit bowl of this area for thousands of years, and it continues to do it today. Down to the south, the Georges River with its wonderful mangroves, animal life and bird life, and out to my left, the ocean and waters beyond. Once again, within those boundaries are the 29 clans of the Eora Nation, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the traditional owners to welcome each and every one of you to country. I'll just quickly pay respects to elders and descendants, both past and present, of the people of the Eora. And every time we do that, when we have welcome to country, we believe that those people are around us. So me being on my traditional land, where my people have been for thousands of years, therefore means there are the thousands of my ancestors around. So I thank them, and I thank each and every one of your ancestors as well, both past and present, because without those people, none of us will be here today. So thank you for your attention, and just in closing, I would like to say to each and every one of you, and I don't say this lightly, or I say it with the deepest respect, may the spirits of my, and I know that because they're here amongst us tonight, may the spirits of my ancestors walk beside you and protect you whilst you're in Gadigal land, Eora country, as I know they walk beside and protect me. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
So thank you, Uncle Ray. So my name is Matthew Phillips. I work for Get Up in the Human Rights team. Thank you for being here tonight. I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. And we do this because it's not only an important matter of respect and protocol, but in terms when we're talking about the discussion in this country about who can come here and who cannot, then it's important to remind ourselves of the foundations of this country, which claims one sovereignty by trying to extinguish another, and then excludes, imprisons and abuses others, such as those on Manus and Nauru who sought safety here. 4 years ago, then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd signed an agreement with Papua New Guinea. The agreement set out an offshore processing and detention regime, and in Rudd's own words, meant that asylum seekers who come here by boat without a visa will never be settled in Australia. Shame. He then signed a similar agreement with Nauru. This was the beginning of the current offshore detention regime. 4 years later, over 2,000 refugees and asylum seekers, including 169 children, remain in limbo in PNG and Nauru. Many of them have been trapped there for that entire period. And today, Kevin Rudd tweeted, "Refugees from offshore should have been resettled in Australia by Abbott and Turnbull 3 years ago." Boy, has he changed his tune. We know nobody should have been sent to those camps, and it's unconscionable that anyone remains there. Even the regime's architect is finally acknowledging it. Tonight, we gather in just one of 50 vigils in towns and cities around Australia to mark this anniversary, to mourn those who have died, to stand with those in Manus and Nauru who continue to suffer. Our demand is loud as it is clear. The camps need to be evacuated and people brought here. Tonight you will hear directly from Manus Island in videos filmed by journalist Behrouz Bachani, an Iranian journalist who's currently detained on Manus Island. You'll also hear from Attica Hussein, who will deliver issue a call to action, a pathway forward for all of us who are determined to stand in solidarity with people who have sought safety in this country. And you will hear from Ming Yu from Amnesty International and Sarah Dale from the Refugee Advice and Casework Service. But first, a memoriam. We want to begin this evening by remembering those who have lost their lives. Six people in 4 years. More people than have been resettled from Manus Island and Nauru. Everyone a human being that our government has tried to erase. But all of us here are committed to remember. Their names are, on Manus Island, Reza Barati, Hamed Kazai, Kamil Hussein, Faisal Ishaq Ahmed. On Nauru, Omid Masamali and Rakib Khan. Please join me in a minute's silence to remember and to mourn their lives, to think of their families and send them our apology for what this country took from them. A son, a father, a husband, a brother, a friend. A minute's silence. Thank you. So as we continue, I want to give you an insight into organising these vigils. When people on Manus and Nauru requested that they happen to mark the 4 years of their detention, we set about organising them, and we heard the same comments from journalists, from politicians and some members of the public. And that comment was, aren't they all going to the US? What is there to worry about? So let us be clear. The US resettlement arrangement was announced 8 months ago. Yet to this day, not one single person has been resettled, and it's already conceded by the Australian government that the deal will not provide safety for all. A report released today by Get Up and the Human Rights Law Centre makes clear that as recently as the 23rd of May this year, refugees and people seeking asylum endured a critical or major incident on Manus Island on average almost every day. The mental health impacts of 4 years of indefinite, arbitrary detention are clear. Actual incidents of self-harm occurred on Manus Island at a rate of once a week on average. And it's not like we didn't know this. Over the past 4 years, 5 parliamentary and departmental inquiries, more than 6 UN investigations, reports of the Australian Human Rights Commission, Amnesty International and numerous others, together with the brave reporting of journalists and whistleblowers who repeatedly told us the same horrific truth. The offshore detention camps are sites of gross physical, sexual and psychological assault and abuse. Nothing has changed. Yet these are the sites of abuse and detention that we are leaving people in to await the vagaries of a US president like Donald Trump. That is why we're gathered here tonight. To say no, to say evacuate now and bring these people here. To say that to the people on Manus and Nauru, we remember, we are lighting these candles for you. And we will not stop until every one of you is safe. So now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mingyu Ha. Mingyu leads Amnesty... Okay, sorry, we're switching it back to the original order. So I'd like to introduce you to Attica Hussain. She will issue a call to action, a pathway forward for all of us, determined to stand in solidarity with people who have sought safety in this country. Thank you, Attica.
Hi everyone. As Matt have already introduced me to an amazing crowd before me, I'll try to introduce myself from a different perspective, as a refugee and my experience as a refugee. The way Australian politicians have portrayed refugees to the public, the way this global humanitarian crisis have become a political issue, the way refugees have been demonized, dehumanized, and categorized as other, in Australia we have seen it all, heard it, felt it, witnessed it, and so many times disheartened and shocked by it. We are all familiar about the cliche of refugee crisis. We've constantly been educated about this issue every day. We know the surface already. I'm going to take you beneath the surface, deeper into the every minute refugee spends in his or her life. My father arrived Australia on boat around about 1999. He was taken to a detention centre in a remote area where he was detained for about 1 year. We didn't have contacts and he could not contact his family too. My siblings and I were too young to understand and why our father could not call and talk to us. We couldn't even pronounce the word Australia properly at that time, where my father was kept in isolation. We waited like 1,000 other refugees in uncertainty, insecurity, and doubt. We waited for almost 6 years. We waited for father, for family reunion. And we missed my father in those 6 years. His physical existence was not saved in our memories, and days and nights passed without him, creating empty space that haunted us. And we still have that emptiness and that hole in our memories. Whenever I recollect my memory of those years, I miss my father in those years. It is a permanent loss. After 6 years, when I first arrived in Australia, after 6 years, when I first met my father, it took my feelings and myself few days to familiarize with this person, someone whom I had waited for 6 years, but had become a stranger to me. I had become younger and he had grown older. My father hardly spoke of his experience from detention center and the process he went through to obtain visa. He still doesn't talk about it a lot. I believe that he's in a complete denial of those years. Something terrible must have happened, something that if he could, would have removed those memories. On November 2006, I entered Australia on humanitarian visa, for which we waited for 1 year to prove our refugee status again. In Australia, I learned more about temporary protection visa. I call it a devil that chained my father for many years and separated us. I also learned more about politics surrounding refugees and bargains on policies and strategies to deal with refugees. A lot of money is spent on various offshore detention centers. A lot of energy and effort has been invested in combating defenseless refugees. A massive work is done in society to create this division among the communities. Phrases like refugees are illegal, they're boat people, they're queue jumpers, they're a threat to the security of Australian borders, and many more baseless allegations. As an Australian citizen, why don't we take a step backward and see a bigger picture that the politicians are trying to hide from us? We, the Australian citizen, the public, we are the victim too, victim of this political game by political parties to advance their political agendas. Instead of discussing the causes and problems leading to the creation of refugees, they are focusing on the refugee themselves. It's similar to condemning and accusing the sick person but not the virus. And this is why our political parties' approach towards refugees are wrong and immoral. As a lawyer, I work on a daily basis with refugees, mostly from Hazara ethnicity, a minority group and the most persecuted in Afghanistan. Most of these people have waited for almost 5 years already without any final decision on their application. Very few numbers have committed suicide after worsening mentally to manage with the level of harshness. Many of these people have sought counselors and psychologists help to lower their level of stress and depression. Many of them have difficulties remembering names of their children and their age. Many of them are broken and ruined. Many of them seem to have given up on their effort to seek refuge. This is the destruction the department from a first world country, developed and civilized, has done to the refugees. While there is no ending to the suffering of refugees, I want to end my speech by saying, let's imagine for a second. Let's imagine that instead of this road that our political parties are on now, these parties had taken more human, honorable, and decent path. What were the harms and the distractions then? What were the gains and achievements? What were the thrills and delight? How we, the people of Australia, would have been pictured and seen by the international community? How would we be remembered? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attica. So as we stand here today, we are just one of 53 or 57 vigils around the country. So thousands of people standing together around Australia and in London and Berlin at the embassy, the Australian embassies, protesting the Australian government's offshore detention regime. Thank you for being here tonight. It wouldn't have happened without a number of organisations. In fact, 150 organisations and prominent individuals signed on to a joint statement in support of these vigils and their message today. One of those organisations was Amnesty International. So I want to play a video that Amnesty has produced today describing the 4 years.
We have an ethical responsibility to look after people wherever we can. And that means that when people come to our shores, we look after them humanely and we look after all of us are anxious, are anguished at the plight of children in detention. When we
what happens when I try and multitask. So I'd like to introduce you to Ming Yu. Ming Yu works at Amnesty International. She leads the campaign to protect refugees and people seeking asylum for the Amnesty International office, Australia office. And she has worked with torture survivors, persecuted minorities and human rights activists from countries such as Afghanistan and Sri Lanka to campaign for their safety and for their freedom. Please join me in welcoming Ming Yu.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Matt. And thank you, Attica, as well, for sharing your family story and also your recommendations of how we can become a more diverse and inclusive and welcoming Australia. And I also did want to acknowledge Uncle Ray Davidson for his welcoming words, because it is that spirit that we're gathered here today. It's about the message of welcome, of inclusivity, of having a more diverse Australia that helps people in need. I also did want to thank everyone who has organised these vigils, particularly Get Up and also ARAN, which is the Australian Refugee Action Network. And also thank you all for coming. So today is an incredibly important day to pay our respects to those who have tragically lost their lives because of the Australian government's abusive offshore detention the Australian government's abusive offshore detention regime on Nauru and Manus. And it's an important day to reflect on the preventable suffering that consecutive governments have inflicted upon more than 2,000 men, women and children, and who are still suffering as we stand here. It's also an important day for all of us here at these vigils to be strengthened by what unites us. And what unites us is our compassion, our common sense, and our welcome to people who just need a safe place to rebuild their lives. So let's draw energy from the fact there are thousands and thousands of people gathered in more than 50 locations around Australia, as well as Manila, London and Berlin. I think that's an amazing effort, yeah? And let's use this energy to continue urging both the major parties to pursue humane alternative refugee policies. An alternative refugee system that does not lock people up in remote islands, does not involve hazardous boat pushbacks, and does not leave people living in limbo on temporary visas. There are humane alternatives. And you know what? The only thing that is missing is political will. Instead of locking people up on Nauru or Manus Island, we should first evacuate people from these detention centres and bring all these people to safety to Australia immediately. Instead of spending almost $5 billion since 2012 on offshore detention, our government could instead be spending this money to help our neighbouring countries to give real choices to refugees. And for example, there are many people who are seeking asylum or who are refugees who are currently in Malaysia, Thailand and Indonesia. The Australian government could be funding programs in these countries which allow these people to work, to send their kids to school and to live in safety. Because when you have real choices, you are not then forced to undertake a dangerous journey by boat, and instead these people can get on with their lives. Instead of corporates like the Australian company Broad Spectrum and the Spanish multinational Ferrovial, instead of these corporates earning millions of dollars off the back of 2,000 people suffering, we should be putting people before profits and end these contracts immediately. And instead of letting just 10 out of the world's 193 countries host more than half the globe's refugees, Australia could offer more people a home. Amnesty is calling for at least 30,000 people a year to be accepted through our humanitarian program. Yes, indeed. And also, our government could be investing in private sponsorship models like what Canada is doing really successfully. And you know, another idea is Australia could include refugees in our existing visa programs, such as student, work and family reunion visas. All these alternatives are so possible. So the problem is not the number of refugees. It is that many of the world's wealthiest nations host the fewest refugees and they do the least. That's right. You know what? It's sharing responsibility. Sharing responsibility is what will solve the current global refugee challenge. And instead, Australia is shirking its responsibility and paying billions of dollars to other governments, to corporates, to abuse thousands of men, women and children. Some politicians, they want to use fear as a tool to divide our community. But let's make sure we show our members of parliament, we show our senators that we are united, and that we are united by compassion and common sense. But we know politicians will only change if we tell them, not just once, but again and again and again. And that we tell them there are better, that there are more humane alternatives. Together as a community, we can make a better world, where children can play, where we can all feel safe, and where we all have a home. We can do this together, and we can do this now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mingyu. So I'd like to introduce you now to Sarah Dale. Sarah is the Principal Solicitor at the Refugee and Advice and Casework Service. Sarah represents many children seeking asylum, including many of those detained on Nauru. Please join me in welcoming Sarah.
Good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Uncle Ray for welcoming us here today and also pay my respects to the traditional custodians of this land. I also want to thank all of you for being out here tonight. I might see if I can we pop the mic up a little bit? Thanks. Thanks, Matt, sorry. Better. Is that better? Yeah. Great. As Matt kindly introduced, my name is Sarah and I'm the Principal Solicitor at the Refugee Advice and Casework Service here in Sydney. Presently, I represent 24 teenage boys that are left in the perils of Nauru. I represent 24 teenage boys that were dragged in the depths of the night to a tarmac and have since spent years in tents fearing for their lives. I represent 24 teenage boys that have been left languishing to question what next, to hope that the USA might be a ticket out of their suffering. I represent 24 teenage boys that have just about lost all hope in compassion and humanity. I represent 24 teenage boys that would literally give anything to get off Nauru. Tonight I speak for these 24 teenagers. I speak for them, I wait in hope for them, I fight for them, and today I want to take lots of photos of the crowd so that we can send them pictures to let them know that we in Sydney have not forgotten them. So can everyone please raise their candles? I'm going to indulge in a selfie really quickly for all of them. Thank you for that. Tonight I want to share with you the story of Abdul. When he was only 3 years old, his father was taken by the Taliban and they never heard from him again. Abdul and his remaining family moved from their home in Afghanistan into Pakistan, where they would be forced to live undocumented and where his mother would struggle to support her 5 children. Faced with continued violence, Abdul was sent in search for safety. He was able to make his journey to Australia. At age 15, he entered Christmas Island Detention Centre, where he remained for approximately 18 months. During those 18 months, he lived in fear he would be ripped from his bed to a life of uncertainty, danger, and devastation. He was only 15 and had already lost a number of his friends during this time to a plane bound for Nauru. On Abdul's boat, another boy by the name of Murtaza, the same age as Abdul, was sleeping just a few doors down and was sent to Nauru, where he has been since September 2013. Murtaza has remained on Nauru for 1,398 days. Shame. Murtaza cannot attend school on Nauru and lives in constant fear, having recently been attacked whilst riding his motorbike. He has serious health issues which remain untreated. His parents don't know he's on Nauru. He tells them weekly he is yet to be released from Australian detention. He fears the news of him being in such a notoriously terrible place would be enough stress to send his mother to her grave. Sharing the camp in Nauru with Murtaza for many months was a young girl named Layla, of the same age as Abdul, but Layla returned to Australia for medical treatment with her mother. Layla's mother became seriously mentally ill and needed to come to Australia for urgent psychiatric treatment. Layla had requested that her mother be treated in Sydney. Layla has an uncle, Yusuf, who managed to leave Syria and arrive in Australia by plane. He arrived in early 2012, applied for protection, and was consequently granted a permanent protection visa. Despite this family all fleeing the same war, each are treated differently, purely due to their different modes of arrival. What we see and learn at RACS every day is that for every Abdul, Murtaza, Layla and Yusuf we meet, there are hundreds of others left in detention or left behind on Nauru and Manus. Not to mention the mothers and fathers who weep, who couldn't do more for their children, their sons who are lost to Manus Island, and their daughters who fear daily abuse on Nauru. You've probably walked past Yusuf's family at the shops. You've met Abdul at the local footy club. He absolutely loves AFL. And Layla you've probably seen waiting for her mother outside her doctor's appointment. You've passed 24 teenage boys on any given day at Central Station. That could have easily been Murtaza. Had a box been ticked differently, Murtaza could have easily been where Abdul is today. Instead, we sent Murtaza and his 23 friends to an island to languish and suffer. This policy is unconscionable in its cruelty and arbitrary application. There is absolutely no justifiable reason for offshore detention and the conditions faced by our community, and certainly no reason at all that will ever justify the horror that our community have lived. The reality of this horrific policy of offshore detention means that any one of them could have been in roles reversed. It could have been any one of them detained here or there. Their fate was sealed by the flick of a pen and an arbitrary decision made by a public officer, with no consideration of who or what or maybe, but purely a decision made to be an example to others of national security and safety for all. We are responsible for the systematic cruelty inflicted upon those who simply ask for our help. We are responsible for what follows a policy riddled with injustice. We have lost 6 lives on our watch. The suffering should have and could have ended before it had even begun. But now it has reached a level so inhumane and toxic. Such suffering is almost unfathomable to us as the listeners. I remember the feeling when my heart sank on 19 July 2013. I was on the RACS floor and we were all left wondering how or why we could ever got back to this point, how we could not have learned from our mistakes, how we would act in such a way without compassion, without dignity, and without any semblance of upholding human rights for those who arrived on our shores. I share that same feeling 1,460 days later, today and all days, as I review the files of the people affected, as we receive documents from the people affected. Our team at RACS are left with chills from the phone calls received, shattered simply reviewing health documents, and we are left in fear, wondering what else we don't know, given the extensive secrecy implemented on such matters. It seems incomprehensible for us as their lawyers, and all we are do is listening, not living. So why am I the one speaking tonight? Why am I the one telling you what I'm told, what I see, what I hear, what I feel, what I judge, and indeed not the tellers themselves? Well, that's because our government maintains that 1,186 men, women and children on Nauru and Manus can't be here tonight to tell you themselves, because our government denies them the safety they have sought, the safety they had every right to seek. And well, until that day comes, that leaves us. That leaves us as the listeners to share the stories told, to document the time lost and the abuses endured, so that one day justice may and will prevail. Tonight, our job as the listeners is to give voice to the 1,576 people affected by this dastardly policy and bring hope to the families affected. We must stand strong. We must bring an end to this offshore cruelty, and we must evacuate now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So, people up the back, can you raise your hand if you can hear me if I speak like this? That's good. I just wanted to introduce this next video. It's a very special video, so I have a favour to ask of everyone who's in the front. I want everyone to be able to see it, so if you're able, if you could crouch down slightly so people can see from the back. Thank you. It's very short, I promise. So Behrouz Bashani is an Iranian journalist that the Australian government has detained on Manus Island for 4 years. So Behrouz has worked with us and many of the men on Manus to produce this short message from the men of Manus to Australia.
Hello, my name is Amir.
My name is Atul. I am from Sudan.
My name is Imran Muhammad. I am a stateless Rohingya from Myanmar.
My name is Naseem Haider. I am from Pakistan. I live countryside near to Afghanistan.
I'm known as a Pan Mukmi, and I'm 25 years old. I'm Iranian, and it's my 4th anniversary in Manus Island concentration camp. I have been detained in this concentration camp of Australia for 4 years.
I'm Kurdish. I'm 4 years in Manus prison. I would like to tell you 4 years is really hard for me.
It's easy to say 4 years in words, but it has been 1,413 days.
When I come to Australia, I am 18 years old. Now I am 22 years. It has been too long I have been in Manus Island Detention Center. I am youngest one in Manus Island, and everybody know me, especially when I feel sad and feel unhappy.
This place is, we call hell.
This is like someone paused my life and never wake up me, and I really want to someone wake me up.
My mother is very close to my heart, and she has been detained in this environment with me as well, because I'm not free. That means she is not free. The thing that I am suffering, she is suffering the same thing.
I got a nephew about 4 years ago. My brothers asked me to choose his name. He is almost 4 years old, and I never see him.
For many of you, cooking may sound something very simple, but one of the things that I would really like to do is that standing beside my mother and cook something for her.
My message for the people like those who just support us in this hard situation, you are the people that those who give us hope. And always when I saw you are fighting for us, really, there will be no one who will not cry in his bed when they saw a support for themselves and people standing for them and fighting for them. And I have only a message for them is thank you. If you are not supporting us, maybe we will lose everything, all our hopes. Thank you.
I would like to ask Australian Prime Minister, please give us our human rights. Please give us our freedom. Freedom is our right. We are human like you.
I hope you can give me my freedom. I got to finish my university and I get to play soccer because I am too young.
This is the government. I am asking from you people to put pressure on your government, to let us free, to evacuate us. I do believe you guys are kind. You can, if you put pressure on your government. That's what I'm asking for, an SOS.
So thank you to Baruz and the men who featured in that film. So it is easy, and I think it's somewhat natural to feel despondent. To think that even gathering here 4 years later kind of represents a monumental failure. The camps are still open. All those rallies, every flyer, every conversation, every letter to a politician. Those fantastic activists that abseiled down Parliament House. Was it worth it? But to think that would be to forget that 4 years ago, Kevin Rudd said these people should be resettled in Nauru and PNG. And after sustained campaigning and advocacy, Turnbull has had to concede to a US deal, which regardless of what comes of it, represents a setback to the government's original plans. And to be despondent would be to forget that just 2 years ago, the contractors running the camps were supposed to sign another 5-year contract to keep them going, until all of us got in the way, and now the camps are closing on 31st October. But no one wants to run them. The contractor for Vigil is walking away. So to be despondent would also be to ignore the incredible advocacy and gritty resilience of those in detention. That each person in detention has been doing their utmost to hold on to their humanity in the face of an overwhelming regime designed to erase it. And as Ben said in the video, together we have the power to influence the decision that Prime Minister Turnbull will make in the next few months. Let's never forget that. And in fact, let's start right now. So those of you who have phones with Twitter on it, we're going to make some noise in the Twitter sphere. So bring out your phone, open up Twitter, and say, hey, Malcolm Turnbull. His Twitter handle is @MalcolmTurnbull. 4 years too many. #evacuate now. Hey, Malcolm Turnbull, 4 years too many. #evacuate now. So, may I ask you to hold up your candles? We are gathered here, we the people who care, and the people who have the power to force Malcolm Turnbull to do the right thing. Evacuate the camps and bring these men, women and children here to safety. It is critical that we spend the next few months speaking to our representatives in the House and the Senate, calling on both major parties to form a bipartisan commitment to immediately evacuate the camps and bring these people to safety. It is crucial that we keep fighting. We won't give up until these men, women and children are free and safe. The next few months will be critical. Don't believe the hype. We are here because together we have fought to bring this regime down. We have stood with those in detention in solidarity to bring it to an end. We cannot and we must not stop. Thank you. Mingyu wants a chant. Bring them here. 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 So, thank you for you all for coming out here on this cold night in Sydney. I've got one more speaker, Susan from RAC. Now, RAC is the Refugee Action Coalition, and they've been instrumental in bringing so many people around the country together tonight. So please welcome Susan to speak about the next RAC rally.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and thank Uncle Ray for his welcome to country, and also feeling very proud, if not quite cold, but wonderful to be joining all of you here today. As Matt said, my name's Susan. I'm from the Refugee Action Coalition. I think tonight is really just another milestone, you know, in a long campaign, but I think one that must continue. It's very important for us to remain on a footing ready to mobilise in vigils like this, but also to get out on the street and to march for those who we heard on the video tonight, for those who can't be with us tonight, for the 1,200 who are currently locked up on Manus and Nauru, and for the thousands more who've been given an ultimatum by Peter Dutton: apply for temporary protection by October 1st or you could face deportation. What a cruel deadline coming from the Minister for Detention, who's now just been given a mega department of security, immigration in Australia. The announcement coming through today. I think this is something we all need to be outraged about and mobilising around. This is a very dangerous situation for Australia to be in now. And I think we can't let tonight be the end of it. It's wonderful to all be here together, feeling so strongly in solidarity with those who can't be with us. But I think we need to go home tonight resolute that we're going to talk to others in our communities, at work, at school, wherever we are, and encourage them to get active. And I want to ask you all to please mark in your date, Sunday, October the 8th, 2 p.m. We're going to be back at Hyde Park here for the big march for refugees. The idea is this is going to be an action where we want to encourage schools to come as contingents, classmates to come, communities, neighbourhoods, even bring people from your street behind a banner. We want this to be a massive march for refugees. We're going to march from Hyde Park to the Welcome Wall at Darling Harbour and make a huge showing in support of refugees. October is a very important month. Manus Island is being demolished around the refugees as we speak. Many of you would be aware of the desperate situation there right now. October 1 is this horrendous deadline that Dutton has set for people for temporary protection. We need to demand that this cruel policy regime ends, and we've got to keep up the pressure to do that. So please, Sunday, October the 8th, 2 p.m, we'll be in Hyde Park South. Tell all your friends. We want as many organisations as possible to sign on to support this action. Please come and see us. We've got a little table over past the grassy area here, and we'll talk to you more about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, thank you for being here tonight. I've just got one more favour to ask. Please help us clean up on your way home. Firstly, by either taking your candles home with you so you can use them again another time, or if you'd like to extinguish them and then separate the cup from the candle, you can drop them into 2 separate bags with the volunteers who will be at the kind of exits. So put candles in one bag and the cups in the other. But feel free to take them home so you can use them again. Thank you very much for being here tonight. We hope to see you again soon. All the best.